Hello everyone, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Kaldish and I've been enjoying playing my Switch 2 for the last 6 months or so. At least, it should be 6 months by the time this video comes out. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Switch 2. It's been about 6 months since launch, and honestly, it's been a ride. I've had a ton of time to play around with the system and get a feel for what Nintendo's trying to do this generation, and I'll be honest, it didn't start off so good. The launch of the Switch 2 was pretty rough, and I bought my Switch 2 shortly after launch, and for a while I found myself reaching for my Steam Deck more often than not. But now, 6 months later, I find myself split pretty 50-50 between my two handheld systems. Honestly, I might even be leaning a little bit more towards the Switch 2. So let's talk about what went wrong, what went right, and why I think that the Switch 2 might become one of Nintendo's best systems ever. Okay, so let's rewind a bit. When the Switch 2 trailer first dropped, the hype around it was massive. Everyone wanted to see what Nintendo was going to do after the original Switch took over the world. But when they finally revealed the price, I don't think anybody was happy about it. And when we finally got the system, it was a rough couple of first months. There were supply shortages, performance hiccups. There was an extreme lack of launch games, with the game only coming out with Mario Kart World. Now, I'm in the personal opinion that games like Cyberpunk and Street Fighter kind of count as launch titles for the Switch 2, mainly because these games weren't on the Switch prior to the Switch 2's launch. And you can't forget about the half-baked game chat feature that won't even be free here soon. And then you get to what I consider to be the biggest problem for the Switch 2, the game keycard situation. The game keycards had a lot of people upset. Instead of doing traditional cartridges, Nintendo introduced these game keycards, which were cartridges that didn't actually contain the game, they only contained a download for the game. It just felt off, especially for people who love collecting games and displaying them up on their shelves, because you're still collecting the game, but you don't really have the game. I'll admit, at first I was nervous. It felt like the Switch 2 wasn't living up to the legacy of the first one. But then I think there was a big switch as more games started coming out for the system. Nintendo dropped Donkey Kong Bonanza, which, let's be honest, it might be the best Donkey Kong title ever made. It brought that classic, rare style and energy back, with lush environments, co-op play that runs super smooth, and some of the best platforming the series has ever gotten. It's no wonder why fans wanted this game to be Game of the Year. Then comes The Legend of Zelda: Age of Imprisonment. In my opinion, this game seemed darker, more cinematic, and even more ambitious than Tears of the Kingdom. I feel like it's one of those games that makes you realize, oh, this is what next-gen Nintendo could look like. And then of course, Pokemon Legends ZA. The return of the Legends formula is exactly what this franchise needed. It's bigger, smoother, and with far better visuals this time around. These games alone flipped the Switch 2's reputation, in my opinion. Suddenly, people weren't talking about the problems that it had at launch, and instead we're talking about how great these exclusives are. Now let's talk about the hardware itself for a second, because this thing is a beast. The Switch 2 is running a custom NVIDIA chip, which is basically a souped up version of their mobile processor. We're talking full 1080p in handheld mode, and up to 4K when docked. Games look incredibly sharp, and the frame rate is rock solid, and the load times are non-existent. Now, I didn't put this part in the script, but I was pretty upset with the screen when it first got announced that it wasn't going to be OLED. After some time passing, I realized the LCD screen on the Switch 2 looks beautiful, and I learned why they didn't put OLED. It's because the new Switch 2 has variable refresh rate. The Switch 2 also uses AI upscaling to get to 4K more consistently than other systems. And what I've kind of learned that to mean is that it can kind of like run it almost at 30 frames per second, and then using like AI upscaling kind of generate frames in between of those, making it 60 frames a second. So even though it might not be using the most powerful processors or anything like that, thanks to the AI upscaling, it kind of matches what a lot of other things are doing out there. Battery life is also much better. I get the same amount of playtime out of my Switch 2, but considering that it's playing much higher performing games, it kind of makes up the difference. And the Joy-Cons are way more reliable now. They feel sturdier, smoother, and just way more comfortable overall. 6 months in, and I'm surprised at how modern the Switch 2 feels. It's powerful enough to handle big AAA ports, but still has that Nintendo charm and flexibility about it. It's definitely made it more difficult to decide whether or not I want to play my Switch 2 or my Steam Deck. Now, I mentioned earlier that I wasn't a big fan of the game keycards at first, and that's still true. There's something special about popping in a cartridge though. It makes me kind of nostalgic, almost like I'm back putting a cartridge in my DS again. But over time, I've grown to kind of appreciate the keycards, if only for one big reason. They inspired me to start my own physical game collection. I realized that even if I don't love the game keycards themselves, I miss that feeling of owning something tangible. A piece of gaming history that you can hold in your hands. So because of that, I started collecting Switch and Switch 2 games, complete with the cases and the cover art, and that hobby kind of snowballed into something else. Since then, collecting has become a big part of what I enjoy about games recently. Starting with a couple Legend of Zelda games, I picked up Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild for the Switch 2, and I've slowly collected a couple of games over the last 6 months since the Switch 2 came out, and I now have somewhere around 14 or 15 physical games. And that has led me down a rabbit hole of collecting other stuff too. Because I started playing Legend of Zelda this year and it's become such a big part of my life, I started collecting Amiibo because of the Switch 2, and I now own 2 Legend of Zelda Amiibo. These were actually my first 2 Amiibo that I picked up. Because of my love of collecting now, I've even started to pick up some manga of series that I really enjoy, like Goblin Slayer, Naruto. But one of the ones I'm most happy about is the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time manga that I have right here. This was actually the very first manga that I picked up, and I wouldn't have it if it weren't for the Switch 2 coming out and reigniting my whole love for video games and trying out the Legend of Zelda series for the first time. It's weird, but I kind of have the Switch 2 to thank for all of this. It reminded me how fun it is to actually own things and not just download them. In a world where everything is digital and subscription based, it just feels so refreshing to have this kind of change in my life. It's also made me care more about preserving games, keeping physical copies of these games around just so that they don't get lost to time. That's the major reason why I decided to start collecting games in the first place. With these game keycards and everything going digital, I didn't want the games that I love to someday be able to go somewhere when it's taken off the servers or anything like that. And now it can't be because I own these games physically. You really just never know when these digital storefronts are going to disappear. It happened recently with the 3DS. So where does that leave the Switch 2 today? I think it's honestly in a really great place. Nintendo's already proven that they can support the console with big exclusives. I think the third-party lineups are improving too. I just hope to see that they do less game keycards in the future. I think the online services have gotten better too. It's not perfect, but I think matchmaking feels way smoother now. At least, I've definitely enjoyed playing rank on Pokemon ZA. I think what really makes the Switch 2 stand out is that it feels confident. The original Switch was revolutionary. This one refines the formula to near perfection. It's portable, powerful, and it's got that cozy Nintendo feeling. I know there were a lot of complaints when the Switch 2 initially came out about the UI of the system looking exactly the same as the Switch, and I was upset about it at first too. After a while of thinking about it, I'm hoping that maybe what Nintendo is doing is later down the line, we'll get a Switch 3 that will also use the same UI, and all of these systems will kind of be connected using the same eShop, and none of them will ever really go out of date. It'll kind of be like Nintendo's way of saying, you can use any version of these systems and they'll all work on our ecosystem and play our games. And if that's what Nintendo's trying to do by using the same UI, the same eShop between the Switch and the Switch 2, I think I'm here for it. So yeah, with that being said, 6 months later, the Nintendo Switch 2 has completely turned around my opinion. It went from a very shaky start to becoming quite possibly one of my favorite systems I've ever owned. The games are incredible, the hardware is solid, and it's even inspired me to start collecting and preserving physical media. If you were on the fence about the Switch 2 early on, or maybe you gave up on it early on, or hey, maybe you were just waiting to pick it up for Christmas, now is the perfect time to get into the system. I think the Switch 2's really found its groove, and I can't wait to see what Nintendo does next with the system. And with that said, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below whether you do or don't like the Nintendo Switch. Let me know down below what you think about it. If you're going to pick it up, if you've already picked it up, let me know all of that down below. Until next time, guys. Peace. Yes. Hello. Hey, baby.
You woke up.
You woke up? Yeah, Daddy's shooting a video. Say hi.